He's going to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. And if this trial gets televised, it's going to be as big, if not bigger, than O.J. Simpson. Welcome to Two Angry Men. Mark, Nick Reiner is going to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. Based on information I have, I am convinced
how much percent sure? Because I couldn't disagree more.
Well, whether you think they will or not, I'm telling you it's going to happen.
Okay, and I'm telling you that I don't think that they are going to enter an NGI plea. That's what it's called, the shorthand, on January 7th. I think they're going to declare a doubt as to competency under 1368.
Well, and I can just tell you, yeah, I mean, you maybe legally you think it's the best strategy. I'm telling you that right now the game plan is not guilty by reason of insanity, and here's why. We found out that Nick Reiner has been diagnosed schizophrenic and has been dealing with this for a while now. And that in the month leading up to the murders, he was out of control. He was spinning. His psychiatrist said he was dangerous and that there were multiple warnings about this. He went to, recently, he went to a rehab facility in the Los Angeles area, one that is very expensive, $70,000 a month. And it caters to people, who are very powerful and rich, obviously. And obviously, Nick didn't have that kind of money. So I think the assumption is the Reiners paid, but he went to this facility. They changed his meds. He was becoming so erratic that they changed his meds 3 to 4 weeks before the murders. And you know the way this works. When somebody is schizophrenic or bipolar and they give them one of these cocktails with various medicines, they have to kind of get it right and adjust it. And sometimes the medicine can actually set people off more than the disease itself. We are told that's what happened with Nick, that he was getting out of his head with the medicines. They didn't get it right. They were trying to adjust it. And all of this happened leading up to the murders, that he was literally out of his head. And that's the way it was put to me. So
right. And that's why I said, okay, this way, everything you just said, I believe is absolutely true to this extent. This is not a recent diagnosis.
Correct.
I can't say why, but I know that it's not a recent diagnosis. I do agree that there were all the indications, and this is a movie I've unfortunately seen way too many times, that this is a common theme, if you will, in schizophrenia, that it's an endless cycle, so to speak, when I see it, where there is medication, people get stabilized, and then because they complain about the medication slowing them down, that's usually the term, or making them gray or sluggish, they then go off the medication. And in this case, this has all the earmarks of them tinkering with the medication once he had cycled out and was, as you said, out of his head. And the problem that I see, back to my point, like a dog with a bone, if in fact that bedspread he was wearing is consistent with him being housed at Twin Towers, which is the mental health facility about a mile from here in the LA County jail system, even though the LA County system, and it's not me saying it, it's the previous 3 sheriffs, all said it's the largest mental health facility in the world. They're going to have a devil of a time trying to get him stabilized or get him to a point where he can deal with this, especially as they get closer to stabilizing him and he realizes what he did. And that's why I think there's going to be a declared doubt as to his competency. But so that people understand, that's a different calculation than the not guilty by reason of insanity. Those are two different legal avenues that they go down.
Okay, a couple of things. Number one, we are told, and I have excellent sourcing on this, that they are working on his meds right now, that he's being worked on both by the doctors there at the facility, but as well, they have outside doctors who in some way are interacting either directly or directly with him to try and figure this cocktail out on the drugs that he's taking. You're also right that he has not understood the enormity of what happened here. We're told he's actually kind of calm, dazed, not able to really process what's happened. So his mental state is still at a stage where it's not computing what he has supposedly done.
And by the way, I've defended these cases before. I will tell you, the closer the client or the accused gets to understanding or grappling with what they have done, the bigger rebound or the bigger psychiatric episode or pendulum swing away from that. It is a incomprehensible thing to understand that you were not within yourself or within your brain when you committed this act. And as you get closer to understanding that, the brain works in ways that I don't even think we completely understand, but there is this effect that happens, coping mechanism, and a lack of whatever term. If we had Drew on here or somebody else, they would correct me as to the terminology. But anecdotally, I see what happens. They can't deal with it. They don't. It's incomprehensible at a level that is hard to put into words.
Two Angry Men is sponsored by Incogni. It is shocking to find out how much of your personal information is online. And it's not by chance. Data brokers and people, search sites collect your personal information, your name, address, phone number, financial information, income, and what they do is they sell it and share it publicly without your consent. So Incogni is here to put an end to that. So using Incogni, it feels like financially reclaiming your personal space, but online. There's no more random calls, no more unnecessary exposure, just more peace of mind knowing your data is handled. And now Incogni has introduced something big. It's called custom data removals. With their unlimited plan, you can copy and paste any link where your information appears, even on sites outside their usual list. Then Incogni's privacy team steps in and handles the removal for you. They actually do the work manually, even with sites that are harder to deal with. It's like having a privacy SWAT team on speed dial. If you care about the law like we do, you probably value public records and transparency. And the issue, legal information that's used to be accessible in context is now scraped by data brokers, repackaged, then sold. And that can affect hiring, it can affect insurance, even search results. Incogni uses privacy laws like GDPR and CCPA to contact data brokers to request removal of your information from commercial databases. It gives you full control over how your name appears online. And because legal systems should protect your rights, they should not turn your past into their profit. So, you can get 60% off on annual plans at incogni.com/angry with code ANGRY at checkout. It's risk-free. Incogni offers a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied. Live free from dangerous spam with Incogni. That's incogni.com/angry for 60% off annual plans. I am told, and again, this is excellent sourcing. I could even go stronger, but excellent sourcing, that he was using drugs, not prescription drugs, but illegal drugs, and that it exacerbated the schizophrenia. And it made me think, because again, whether you're right or wrong on the competency issue, he may become competent to stand trial when they stabilize him. But the plea, I'm told, where they're going now is not guilty by reason of insanity. That means that he couldn't appreciate that what he was doing essentially was wrong when he did it because of the state he was in. And that's what they're going to have to show. I was wondering about doing the illegal drugs, on how that plays, because I would assume, tell me if I'm wrong here, that the prosecutors would say, wait a minute, if he may have schizophrenia and maybe the cocktail was wrong, but if he was using illegal drugs and that exacerbated and pushed him over the line with the schizophrenia, it's like a drunk driver. They can't say, well, I was drunk, therefore I didn't know what I was doing and I killed somebody. They're guilty. And likewise, prosecutors would say, hey, if he was using illegal drugs and it made the schizophrenia, it took it to a point where he butchered his parents, then that's on him. It's not the schizophrenia, it's his decision to take illegal drugs. Therefore, the not guilty by reason of insanity doesn't apply. Is that what prosecutors would argue?
Well, you saw, I assume, who the prosecutor is in this case. I mean, it's Nathan Hochman's office, but they have now assigned Habib Balian, who is recently coming off of the Menendez resentencing. I like Habib a lot, and I've called him now the parasite prosecutor. But having dealt with Habib in a courtroom in these kinds of cases, that's exactly where he is going to go. I will tell you the uphill battle that he has. The uphill battle that he has is even a court-appointed prosecution-leaning psychiatrist forensic is going to have to admit under a cross-examination that when your schizophrenia or your episode is such that you're there, the taking illegal drugs is just a form of self-medication because of what you're combating. The whole cycle, this kind of pernicious, endless cycle of this mental health, chicken or egg, is it the drugs that exacerbates the schizophrenia? Is it the schizophrenia that causes you to take the drugs? They become so intricately intertwined that it is really, really difficult, if not impossible, to parse out where the beginning is, what is in this kind of chain of the mens rea of the mental problems that you end up having. This is somebody who I guarantee you, speaking of excellent sourcing, I don't need the sources to know this is somebody who has had long-standing mental health issues that have flared up, as they always do in diagnosed cases of schizophrenia. It is something that appears at a certain age generally, and then it is with you, and it cycles, and that cycling is the most frustrating thing in the world, especially to the loved ones around you. And coming back again, so I'm clear here, if he is in Twin Towers, which I believe that he is, this is the problem I have run into repeatedly. You take somebody who is in a mental health crisis, commits some crime that they're accused of. You get them in there and you try to stabilize them so that you can get them in a position where they're competent to go forward with the proceedings. The problem is that Twin Towers is not some of the other facilities like Atascadero. And what ends up happening is if they're determined to be incompetent and they're sent to Atascadero where they get competent, every time they come back to LA, to the county jail system, they completely disintegrate again. It's an endless cycle. I've got a case where it took 10 years before the person was able to get to and an order from the judge that they be transported back and forth from the mental health hospital, because every time you come to county jail, you just disintegrate again.
So let's make an assumption for a minute. I hear you. Based on, and I've got to be very circumspect here, based on what I know, there seems to be an assumption that at a point he's going to become competent. Maybe there's a feeling that they can stabilize him with meds. But let's assume that happens, where he's competent enough to stand trial. And then this not guilty by reason of insanity, NGI, comes into play. I was thinking about that today. And the prosecution is going to show photos of the bodies. And I am telling you, Mark, we have not fully reported what happened here, but they were horrendously butchered. And these pictures are going to be almost impossible to look at. And when the jury sees it, and especially a jury that largely is going to connect in some form with Rob Reiner, it is just going to be heart-wrenching. So I would think the defense is going to counter all of this by putting people up on the stand to talk not just about Nick's mental illness and the observations that they had regarding that, but also the relationship that Nick had with Rob and Michele, and to show that Rob and Michele loved him and he loved them. And they're going to try to, I would think, paint a picture of a family that for years, 17 rehabs, years, tried to solve this, tried to deal with what became an unsolvable problem. And that creates kind of the sympathy and opens the door to an NGI plea. Is that right?
Well, look, you have tapped into something, and I'm going to go a step farther. The relationship between Rob and Nick will be on stark display. And by the way, it's going to be told through the remaining kids, the remaining family members. And how do I know that? They would not, if they were not kind of torn in this unimaginable conflict between the brutal loss of their parents, and now the accusation against their brother, they never would have hired Alan or hired private counsel. That would not be the move you would make unless you love your brother so much, and unless you had gone through what it's like to have a close family member who is constantly cycling through these issues. They're going to be able to tell that. They're going to be able to say that. And by the way, one of these things that had occurred to me, everybody's speculating. They're going to ask for the death penalty. They're going to ask for the death penalty. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've heard that. Do you know the person, first and foremost, who I haven't talked to Rob Reiner in years, but I've disclosed, in full disclosure, early on in my career in the 90s, he could not have been more supportive of several of my clients and cases I had. And I always loved the humanity and his humor in him. The first person who would be saying, "What the fuck are you doing? You're going on the death penalty," would be Rob Reiner. There is no way That's right. in hell that Rob Reiner or Michele or his wife would want the DA to be seeking the death penalty, even with them as the victims. And that is the quandary that the DA is in. I wouldn't give you 50 cents for asking for the death penalty in this case.
Look, I can't predict what the DA is going to do, but my gut tells me they are not going to ask for the death penalty. I just think because of the mental illness, the schizophrenia, sometimes when prosecutors go that hard, that it's easier for the jury to see the other side. And when you see the other side, you could probably embrace it more than if they feel like they're more between the lines. I just would be shocked if they ask for the death penalty. I don't know about you.
Well, the irony of this is, we're both lawyers. The Supreme Court of the United States has grappled on more than one occasion as to whether capital punishment is cruel and unusual for somebody who is not competent. And this whole idea, the kind of gruesome nature of forcing somebody to be competent so that you can then execute them, that is a live legal issue over the years. And to your point, how in the world would you ever say, we're going to go against the family, because I'm going to bet you that the surviving family members would say, "Are you out of your mind? We don't want you to put him to death." And how would you go against what I think anybody who would know them would say, which is that Rob Reiner, at least the Rob Reiner I knew way back when, never in a million years would want his kid put to death for his death. You have to understand, and having witnessed for over 40 years and defended thousands, I guess, of kids whose parents struggled with the mental health issues. You are, to a variation on that old expression, you're only as happy as your unhappiest kid. And the struggle, the heartbreak, the amount of love that you expend trying to deal with your child who is in distress is just incalculable. And the idea that somehow he's had a psychotic break and he ends up killing you as a parent, and then the prosecutor is going to vindicate some incalculable, imagined, fantastical interest to kill you when we don't even know what your mental state was. It literally is something out of some Kafkaesque model.
Well, yeah, and everything you said so rings true, to me at least. But also remember that this kid was living with the Reiners, up until the murders, and they knew his problems. They were everything I've been talking about today. They knew, 1,000 times more, and they still embraced him and tried to help him and loved him. And a reporter once asked Rob about this, that do you not like your kid or something to that effect? And he said, I love my kid. And he was just like unhesitatingly quick to jump and say, I love him. And, when the jury hears this, I think it's going to really resonate. And it kind of brings me to something. And look, I obviously have a dog in this fight because you're going to say, well, we're TMZ, so of course we won it. I really hope that this trial is televised. And I'll tell you why. This will bring to life the real struggle with mental illness and what families, even with means, have to deal with, because, there are a lot of people who never have a fighting chance. In fact, it's funny because somebody today who's involved in this told me this kid the quote was, never had a fighting chance. That's what they said. But, a lot of people think, oh, well, they have money, they can afford a psychiatrist and rehab and everything else. And this is going to show that doesn't solve the problem, and that the problem can't just be solved by throwing somebody in a facility for 30 days. And it may not be solved very well at all, but there are things we can do, and people have ignored this. And I think if it comes to life in a trial, and especially presented by somebody like Alan Jackson, who's just a fabulous criminal defense lawyer, he's just fresh off the Karen Reed victory, but he can present that case, because this is going to be a case presented about mental illness, and it's going to have all the elements in it. It's going to have love and violence and frustration, and you're going to see all the people in Rob Reiner's orbit testifying about what the family tried to do. And I think because people will have such connections with the witnesses and the story and the fact that this is a beloved guy, this will be a trial as big as O.J. Simpson in many ways, especially because of social media. And I think it's going to put a spotlight, if it happens, on mental illness in a way that you can't do by just talking about a congressional bill.
So what you just stated was a TMZ fever dream, because my prognostication here, I can't remember a single case where when we did jury selection where there was mental health that was in the mix, where I asked jurors, raise your hands if you have someone close to you or you yourself have had.
Everybody raise their hand?
Everybody. It's almost universal. I don't know a single economic, demographic, ethnic group. It touches everywhere, cuts across everywhere. The problem with these cases is what I was describing before, this endless cycle. It is awful. And it reminded me while you were talking, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen a lot of commentators trying to say, well, they should have, and it's just mind-boggling to me, they should have engaged in tough love, they being the Reiners. They should have done this, they should have done that. That drives me literally nuts, because if you think that somehow tough love or a lack of tough love or parenting skills is what is at play here, then you're really, really naive as to mental health. This is not something about tough love or lack of tough love or indulgence or pampered, or I've seen a narrative about where they're trying to take this and paint this as if somebody was indulging their kid. This is a legitimate illness. Schizophrenia is no joke, and the cycle that it starts and how it grips the people and how it grips the brain and how it just infects the brain. I wish before today I had called one particular client I'm thinking of and asked if that client was okay with me talking about their struggle, because this is such a flashback to so many cases I've handled, and the just the devastation that mental health brings to this, that the idea that somehow they're going to be able to stabilize him with mental health in custody, I think is fanciful, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, look, you may be right. You may be right. But if it goes to trial, honestly, I hope there are cameras in that courtroom, because I think it's going to do a lot to raise. I realize that a lot of people deal with it, maybe most people in some form, but I think to see the consequences of it, and again, I'm thinking maybe it'll be better funded and everything else, but there was plenty of money in this case, and money couldn't solve the problem. And, and part of it is, and somebody said this to me today, I know what facility he went to, and it's a 30-day program. You cannot solve this problem in 30 days. And, it's the kind of...
I've often said that about addiction centers, and they get mad at me when I say
you're right.
They drive by 30, I call them the drive by.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do that in 30 days. The commitment, I've had this discussion with my buddy Drew Pinsky for decades about this idea that these drive-bys are just, it's kind of a feel-good solution, so to speak.
And $70,000 a month, by the way.
Yeah, they're not cheap. Although, sometimes I'd like to take 30 days in one of these places and just turn in my phone, but that's a whole different issue.
Mark, let's not. Okay, there's something else. And I don't know how much this will amount to, but we broke a story that Nick had checked in. It may well be, he checked in at 4:15 in the morning on Sunday. And it may well
checked
be
into
a hotel, to a motel in Santa Monica. And, it may well have been after the murder. It's unclear to me still whether it was before or after, but he checked into the hotel. And ultimately, when the room was cleaned at 11 o'clock in the morning, we are told that the housekeeper found blood in both the shower and on the bed sheets. So the LAPD showed up at that hotel on Monday morning at 1 a.m. I am told
1 a.m. the day after.
Monday, the day after. I am told that the detective who showed up said the following, and this is through the people at the hotel, that they were there
Are you trying to distance yourself from LAPD sources?
No, why would I answer that question?
Okay, go on.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. So they said two things. One, that they were there for a welfare check on Nick. Two, that they were there to see if there was a weapon connected to a violent crime. Those are two very different things. If it's a welfare check and the police are legitimately concerned about somebody's welfare and they go to a hotel room and the person at the front desk lets them into that room, which is a room that was assigned to the person, then I could see doing it without a search warrant. If it's to check to see if there's a weapon or other evidence, that's the way they put it, or other evidence connected to a violent crime, I think there's an argument there that maybe you need a search warrant. And if you try to mix both and say it's for a welfare check and to see if there's evidence, It seems like the evidence part is the part that's going to require the search warrant to enter the room.
When you frame it that way, what
And
immediately
and
comes
we're
to
told
mind,
we're told that
there
they never
was no
presented a
search
search warrant,
warrant.
right?
And by the way, we're also told that they waited an enormous amount of time to get a search warrant in another facet of this investigation. But what it reminds me of, we've spent the last couple of weeks watching, at least you have, and others have, the Luigi Mangione scene and the search in the McDonald's. And that was one of the issues there, because the New York state law is different than federal, and he's being prosecuted simultaneously or in parallel prosecutions. But there are crossover issues, the way you framed it there, as to whether or not, in Luigi's case, whether it was exigent and whether it was they should have gotten the warrant. And in this case, the same thing to some degree, a wellness check as a kind of a substitute for exigent circumstances. There's a host of issues there. That becomes really important if they're going to fight the facts of whether he did it. If they're going to embrace that he did it, but he was NGI, assuming he regains competency, or that becomes a non-issue before the 7th, there is a world in which they may not challenge the search for a variety of reasons. When you were talking about what the prosecutor may use afterwards, kind of after behavior or the surrounding kind of timeline, there are things that I could use, I think, and that Alan could use from that search in that hotel room or motel room that you might want to show, depending on how you present it, that are consistent with the fact that he was in a psychological break such that it supports the idea of an NGI.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Okay, finally, let's talk about your boy for a minute.
Which boy?
Donald Trump really blew it. Donald Trump so blew it by going after Rob Reiner and essentially calling him un-American and that he had Trump derangement syndrome. I think, when I watched that, I just thought to myself, because I heard a lot of people being outraged, and I just thought, those people this is their dream, which is this is a bridge too far, even for MAGA people. And I think he's lost a lot of support by showing this side of him to almost celebrate Rob Reiner's death. I think there are a lot of people, for various reasons, who love Rob Reiner. They loved him on All in the Family. They loved his movies like Misery and When Harry Met Sally. They loved his passion for politics. They loved a lot about Rob Reiner, even if they disagreed with his politics. And for Trump to do what he did, I got to tell you, I mean, we're clearly seeing huge breaks and cracks now in MAGA. There are going to always be a group that's going to support. But if you look at a lot of the polling, even the MAGA people are splitting on various issues with him, but especially something like this. He thinks, I think he was so successful at being outrageous for so many years that I think that he has a derangement syndrome about that, and that it is not working for him anymore. And I think this is prime evidence of that.
So I watched a clip of James Woods, the actor, with Jesse Waters, and I thought it really resonated with me. I've got one degree of separation with James from a TV show that he did that my ex-partner was the kind of the attorney consultant on. And I watched what he said about Rob fighting for him at a certain point in his career, and they couldn't be more diametrically opposed politically. And James Wood, he's a great actor, but I don't think he was acting. I think it was a heartfelt, kind of a authentic reaction to the death. And it resonated with me just because, as I had mentioned earlier, his early support back in the 90s on a case that I had and a woman that I was defending. And I felt the same way. I will tell you that I think just objectively that the tweet or the post, I guess it wasn't technically a tweet.
Well,
was
he
a
talked
post on
about it
Truth
afterward. He
Central.
doubled down on camera.
He doubled down on camera. Right, I saw that as well. I mean, it was over the top by anybody's standards. You can't, and I haven't seen anybody come out and defend it with any great fervor, except some of the remaining usual suspects. But I will tell you this: I don't think that to me was any crazier than the John McCain statements early on. I thought those were, to some degree, as insanely over the top. And I just think people are used to it, and kind of there's a exhaustion when it comes to those things, that it doesn't really get any traction anymore. I think what a bigger problem was, if you want to get a political analysis, I think the discharge petition and then the votes and everything Massey did and MTG is doing, I think has done a lot more damage to him. And this just feeds the fire of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, he's going to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. And if this trial gets televised, it's going to be as big, if not bigger, than O.J. Simpson.
And absent something dramatic changing between now and January 7th, I still think Allen is going to declare a doubt under 1368 of the Penal Code. So we will see who's right and who's wrong, although we could both be right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Let's leave it at that. Let's agree on something. Okay.
We will agree as we end.
I'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.